Hey there, VC. So today we are going to be talking about this guy right here. So, the Miles Davis Kinda Blue UHQR 33 RPM box set by Analogue Productions, pressed at QRP 1x1 on a manual press, mastered by Bernie Grunman. So, these have been arriving at everyone's doorstep this past weekend, Memorial Day weekend, and lots of people have been sharing their thoughts, but I thought before this becomes passe, and while you can still get this, I thought I would share some of my impressions listening to this amazing pressing Analogue Productions have put together. So Kinda Blue is a record that's been pressed many different times, many different pressings. I don't have anywhere close to all of them. In fact, I actually really only have, I used to own the Sony Legacy Mono, but I don't have that anymore. There's really only one other pressing I have, and that's the Mobile Fidelity. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about my comparisons and listening to the Mobile Fidelity. For now, I just want to say that after listening to this a couple times, I think I've listened to this 3.5 times now, it's really something special. If you were on the fence about this, I think you should go for it. $100 is expensive. $100 is a lot for a vinyl record. But I think they did a really great job with this, and I think this is going to be, for a long time, I think this is going to be the reference for this album. I will show you a little bit of the box set before I talk about the sound. So just like previous UHQR releases, it comes in this great box set that is essentially, they bill it is reviving UHQR, but this style box set actually comes from the RCA Living Stereo Sarai series, and let me grab one of those. So here we have my incredibly beat up thrift store copy of Berlioz's Requiem, conducted by Charles Munch on RCA Living Stereo. And if you'll see, this is actually, I bet this is where Chad got the inspiration for the UHQR style boxes, because it has this like library spine. Mine is really beat up, but it's the same kind of setups here. It's the exact same box design. So if you were wondering where he got the idea for the UHQR boxes, this is it. They did a couple of these with this style box, RCA, in the 50s and 60s. So anyway, obviously my Miles Davis box is in much better condition, and I hope to keep it that way. But in here, there's a great pamphlet about the process. It shows pictures of the way they did a super flat profile for this one. So traditionally records have had a sloped profile. This was a thing because people had record changes, especially in America, and they wanted the outside lip of the record to be a little thicker so that when the records drop on top of one another, the grooves don't touch each other. So that's why that exists. And it's kind of this thing that's just stuck around in the music industry and pressing plants. And just because that's the way the presses are built. And Chad at Acoustic Sound said, no, that's stupid. It will sound better if we have a flat profile. And so that's what they did for this. They used a flat profile. Here's some pictures of the actual presses this was pressed on. And if you watched the live stream they did, the first live stream, they actually cut to live footage of these records being pressed. One of them maybe was mine, I don't know. But I think most of you have seen that. If you haven't, I'm going to link it down below. It's a very, very interesting live stream with Bernie Grunman talking about mastering this album over 30 years ago now. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, about. Anyway, so here's the actual jacket. It's this beautiful Stoughton tip-on jacket, glossy, with wonderful photos on the inside. It's a really phenomenal package and presentation. My numbered copy is number 2687. And this is out of a run of, they're going to do 25,000. So I think there was rumors going around that this sold out. I do not think this is sold out, but I might be wrong. But I think Acoustic Sounds is still accepting orders. So, and they pressed, from what Chad said in a recent video, they pressed about 5,000-6,000 so far. So they still have about 19,000-20,000 left to go. So if you want to get this, I think for now you're okay. Just get your order in. After we talk about presentation, I want to talk a little bit about where this pressing comes from in terms of its mastering history and a tape history, and then I want to get to the sound. So as some of you know, but I'm sure some of you haven't heard yet, this pressing was done from the metal plates that were cut by Bernie Grundman back in, I want to say like 1997, for Classic Records. So this is essentially a quality record pressing repress of the Classic Records run. Same metal parts, but very, very different pressing. Technology, different presses, different care, and different vinyl profile, and different vinyl material. I have never heard an original Classic pressing of this album. So if you want comparisons, go to other people that have heard them. I know Michael Fremer has done a comparison. I think Mike from the In Groove has talked about the Classic Records pressing. I don't know if he's compared it to the UHQR yet. So Bernie Grundman had access to the original 3-track master of this album. And he cut that live to 2-channel to the lathe. So it was a live cut from the 3-track master. This is in contrast to the other pressing of this album that I'm going to be talking about. The Mobile Fidelity Kind of Blue box set that came out about, I want to say like 7 years ago. Around that. This has been another hot seller, and it's difficult to get right now, but I think MoFi are going to put it back on the presses pretty soon. So this was not cut from the original 3-track master. This was cut from a 2-track mixdown, or 2-track transfer copy. And so the original 3-track master was mixed to a 2-track tape, a copy tape, safety tape. And then that's what MoFi got their hands on for this release. And they took the 2-track tape, copy tape, and pressed the 45 RPM records from that copy tape. So it's one generation removed from the original 3-track master. I don't think they're ever going to let the original 3-track master out of the vaults again. I mean, Chad is going back to a 1997 lacquer cut for this release. It just, because of the way companies are guarding tapes now and how hard it is to do audiophile reissues of these big name titles, I don't know if we're ever going to see an all analog cut from the 3-track master again. We're certainly not going to see, I don't think we're going to see a new mastering from the original 3-track master. I think they've got that tape under lock and key. I don't think they're ever letting it out again. I could be wrong, but that's my prediction. Acoustic Sounds has been able to do something really special here, and that's because they bought the rights to the Classic Record catalog, and because they bought all those metal parts that Classic Record had, they've been able to do this. And of course, they had to secure the rights to reissue a new reissue, but besides that, they kind of lucked out, I think. So I think the question on everyone's mind, and what the question everyone's been asking is, well, which version sounds better? Because here we have a 33 RPM cut from the original 3-track master, mastered by Bernie Grundman. And here we have a 45 RPM Mobile Fidelity cut done from a very close tape copy, 2-track tape copy. But 45 RPM tends to sound more dynamic with better bass, just in general. 45 RPM is a superior format for an audiophile release than 33. So how much give and take do we have? Well, so I listened to both of these back to back, and in my opinion, the clear winner is the UHQR by a big margin. I did take notes, actually, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my listening notes. The one thing I noticed from the going back to the, so I obviously I listened to the UHQR first when I first got it, listened to it once for pleasure, and then once again more critically, and then I went back to the MoFi, and The big thing I noticed from the MoFi is there's much more bass. Much more bass on the MoFi. And I don't know how much of that is the 45 RPM aspect versus the mastering choices versus what was done in the 2-track mixdown. I don't know, but there's a lot more bass. However, it's not what I would call accurate bass, especially in the upright bass. On the lead up into So What, Paul Chambers' bass, on the MoFi, it was really big and pronounced, this big, deep sound, but it was kind of tubby and kind of indistinct. There wasn't a lot of like pitch and tone to it. Whereas when I listened to the same track on the UHQR, yeah, the bass was a little lower in the mix, but I think it was a lot more balanced, and there was more tone and center to the sound. You really got more of a sense of like you're in the room with the bass rather than you're listening to a bass recorded in like a big boomy hall. And that's kind of the overarching theme I get of the UHQR versus the MoFi, is that the UHQR is just much more clear. There's a lot more detail. There's a lot more, its transient attacks are a lot more natural and realistic, and the balance is better. On both albums, Miles Davis sounds great on both pressings. I think there's a little more depth and breadth to his sound on the UHQR. This is more apparent in the saxophones. If you listen to the solos with Cannonball Adderley or John Coltrane, there's so much more readiness in their sound on the UHQR as compared to the MoFi. Sometimes the big dynamic climaxes when the whole band comes in, sometimes those are a little more impactful on the MoFi, but it doesn't really sound organized. The sound kind of is mushy in those big sections as compared to the UHQR, where it's way more clear. Something that I listen for, because I listen to a lot of orchestral music, is in big crescendos, in big parts where the whole orchestra is pushing, does the image hold together? Does the instrumental separation hold together in those really big complex passages? And in the UHQR, it does that. And on the MoFi, it just kind of doesn't. You just get big sound. But far and away, I think the two biggest things I just noticed right away going back to the UHQR is Bill Evans' piano is so much more clear and tuneful in the UHQR as compared to the MoFi. In the MoFi, it just sounds like the piano is muffled, is like behind a door. And I don't think in any version of this album, the piano is like one of the more clear things in the mixes. A lot of jazz albums, the piano kind of gets a short stick because just in general, the pianos in jazz recordings tended to be shoved into walls and corners quite a bit. I don't know if that's the case here. I know in like a lot of Blue Note pressings, like at Rudy Van Gelder's studio, the piano would be shoved against the wall, against a curtain. And so the piano on all the Blue Note releases always sounds a little muffled in comparison to the rest of the instruments. I think this has a little bit of that tendency on both pressings, but on the UHQR, the piano is much more clear. The hammer strikes are a lot more sharp, and there's just better shimmer and pitch and image on the UHQR. So the drums sound good and impactful on both pressings, but on the UHQR, the cymbals have so much more shimmer. The attacks, especially when he's playing on like the bell of the ride cymbal, it's so much sharper and more clear. It sounds like it's right there in the room in front of you. And I know that's like an audiophile cliche to say right there in the room in front of you, but it really did. It felt like there was a live drummer in the right side of my listening stage, of my sound stage from the listening chair. I could talk more. I could go over my notes in more detail. I mean, the big wow moment for me in this pressing was Blue and Green. The third track on the album, it's so mellow and soulful, and so every little thing, because there's so much space on that track, every little thing each instrumentalist does, the little the little musical decisions they make in their solos, the little bits of phrasing, just the whole vibe is, you hear everything so much more clearly, and you really get a better sense of musical involvement and enjoyment listening to that track on the UHQR that it's missing on the MoFi. So the bottom line is, even if you have the MoFi already and you care about this album, I don't think you've heard it really until you've heard this UHQR cut. And that's not to say the MoFi is a bad cut. It's not. They did a really good job, but they just they weren't using the original 3-track master, and you can just hear the generational difference. And also, you know, MoFi's pressings are very good, but it's nothing compared to what they're doing here with the manual fine belt pressing at Quality Record Pressing. It's just, there's just no comparison. Yeah, 2 thumbs up. This is incredible. I mean, everyone and their grandma this weekend on social media has been talking about this album and saying how much they enjoy it. The Clarity vinyl, I'll show the Clarity vinyl here, is really good. It was pretty quiet for the most part, but it wasn't like I wouldn't say the background noise on the vinyl was like a revelation or anything. It was very quiet. But it, you know, it still had an occasional little like hiss or crackle. It's the same level of noise that I would expect from any other QRP pressed record, in that it's, compared to most records, it's incredibly silent with incredibly black backgrounds. But if you asked me to listen to this side by side with, let's say, if they were to press the same album on their normal presses, I don't know if I could notice a huge difference in terms of noise. But I'm sure that there's more that goes into the sound quality of this release and this pressing, just beyond noise. I mean, the way they cut it, the nature of the fine belt press is about more than just pressing a dead silent record. But no complaints in the pressing department. My pressing was great. So all this being said, that raises the question. What the hell is the 45 RPM going to sound like? There is going to be a 45 of this. Chad has pretty much confirmed it. They are going to do this at 45 RPM the same way. And I'm really excited, and personally I'm going to be, as soon as that pre-order goes up, I'm going for it, because they did such a good job with this at 33 RPM. I can't imagine it getting better than this, but I know at 45 RPM they're going to have much more to work with. They're going to have more space to cut dynamics, to cut bass. So I'm excited for the possibility. But for now, they've got to finish pressing these. So if you have listened to this and you have other pressings to compare it with, let me know down in the comments. I know a lot of you probably have the original Classic Records pressing of this album. So let me know, if you're able to compare it to this, let me know what you think in the comments. If you have original 6-eyes, I welcome all of that down there. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because I check the analytics and a lot of the people that watch my channel aren't subscribed. So please hit that subscribe button, because YouTube says I should tell you that. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on the wonderful pressing by Analogue Productions, the UHQR Miles Davis Kinda Blue. It's just a phenomenal record. Musically, sonically, it's really a artistic statement that they've managed to produce. So congratulations, Chad, and everyone at Analogue Productions. You guys have made one of the best record releases in recent memory. So cheers.